Glad you made it back, everybody. It's been more than 3 weeks of riots and ripping down monuments across the country. But as President Trump heads back on the campaign trail, the basket of bias press is renewing its focus on social distancing and the China virus. Coinky-dink? Here to discuss this is author and Newsmax columnist Tom Basile and Trump campaign surrogate and senior partner at South Strategies, Brian Trascher. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being there. Brian, we're going to start with you. We see the media covering more of the China virus now that several states are seeing a rise in case numbers and that Donald Trump is hitting the trail. But they said virtually nothing during the riots. Example of bias and unfairness in your view?
Well, not only that, but we're exactly about 2 weeks after all the big protests and riots, and now we're starting to see this spike in COVID-19 cases. But what people aren't talking about is, number one, that the people that were at the protests, even though they'll tell you they were all masked up and social distancing, they weren't. I mean, the video shows that they weren't. But one thing I found out, Chris, it's very interesting, and I want your viewers to know, contact tracers are forbidden from asking anybody if they attended a protest. The government, or I say the government, but people are trying to blame this on things like high school parties and bars and things like that, when they had hundreds of thousands of people gathering in big cities, not social distancing, not wearing masks. And it was exactly the amount of time ago that COVID-19 usually incubates for. It's not a coincidence.
Brian, really quickly, we brought that up. It was our understanding it was New York and left-wing bastions only. Are you saying that's nationwide contact tracers are forbidden?
My understanding is that most states that are contracting with these call centers to do the contact tracing are telling them not to ask if people went to protest. That's my understanding.
Wow. Okay. Tom Basile, I don't know if in the course of your investigative journalist pursuits, you've been able to run across something like that. Maybe if you have, clarify, but give us your overall view of how the president has handled the riots and the protests.
Look, you know, I've been saying for about a month, Chris, that the president really needs to try to elevate the conversation, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One, I think it's the right thing to do, especially when the Democrats seem to have bought into this violence and this hatred and the divisive nature of what we're seeing on our streets. But also because, look, this makes sense, you know, in terms of reaching out to independent voters. And I would love to see the president, who has taken a much harder stand on these protests than even a lot of other Republicans have, interestingly, to give an Oval Office address where he actually uses the facts that he has about the failure of Democrat policy in these cities and in communities of color that really underlies a lot of the violence that we have been seeing. You know, Donald Trump has this enormous opportunity to say, yeah, you know what? Let's have the right conversation. Let's be talking about the fact that hundreds of people are getting shot in the streets in Chicago. Why? Why is that happening? And let's not take our eye off the ball, while at the same time talking to directly to the governors and the mayors in these cities and saying, look, if you're not going to secure these cities and protect your citizens, federal law enforcement will. So I'd really like to see him really do those two things.
Brian, let's switch gears. Another big story this week was NASCAR. NASCAR and Bubba Wallace called their fans in America racists before they knew the facts. And I was thinking about this the other day. Democrats do the same thing every 2 years and every 4 years during an election. They come on the scene. They say America is racist. America is terrible. America is crazy, and we'll stop calling you racist. They and their agents in the press say we're going to stop calling you racist only if you elect Democrats. Does that pass the smell test after 8 years of Barack Obama, the first black president, that America is a racist country?
It doesn't. And look, this failed publicity stunt by NASCAR just blew up in their face. You know, I don't know if Bubba Wallace was trying to become the Colin Kaepernick of racing, but the thing is that people need to understand is that he's not the one that called in the report about this supposed noose hanging in his garage. We found out later it was just a simply tied rope, garage door pulled down that's been there since October. There's no way anybody could have known that 8 months later Bubba Wallace was going to be using that as a garage. Definitely wasn't a hate crime. They put 15 FBI agents on this. But, you know, going back to what Basile said, I think he absolutely nailed it. I think it's time for the president to step up, use the bully pulpit, and start giving facts to the American people. Stop letting the left and the Democrats control the narrative, because he's got the upper hand here. and he's heading into a re-election. And Joe Biden is saying that 120 million people died from coronavirus, and last year he said 150 million died from gun violence. That's 270 million Americans that died. I'm calling up my family to figure out which one of the 2/3 are dead that I didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, and still the press won't cover it. You know, they're so unfair, they don't even cover that. Tom, switching gears, you have focused in on one of the key members of the Trump administration, AG Barr, in one of your most recent articles on Newsmax.com. Tell us what some of the questions that you think AG Barr needs to answer.
Well, look, I realize that the wheels of justice move slowly, and the Attorney General says he's got 500 cases that are related to these protests and the violence that they're investigating. He also has indicated that there are foreign actors that are involved in trying to destabilize the country and are involved in a lot of the unrest that we are seeing. But it's really time that the Attorney General starts connecting the dots for the American people, together with our intelligence agencies. Chris, I really want to see that nexus chart that shows who's funding Antifa. I want to find out what the shell organizations and individuals are that are pass-throughs for money, who's actually coordinating these. Because when Americans go look on their television screens every night and they see this unrest, they are tempted to think that this is a grassroots effort. It is not. It is well-heeled. It is well-funded. I want to know if organizations, maybe like BLM, are in violation of federal statutes like incitement, fraud, misrepresentation. And I really think that at this point, when we see these governors like Cuomo and mayors like de Blasio and Mayor Jenny up there in Seattle, when you see them completely capitulate to the mob, it's time for the federal government to step in and give the American people some answers about this, especially as we're getting close to the election.
Yeah, I'd like to see a similar chart about the Trump-Russia collusion investigation and who did what in the Obama administration to violate the civil rights of many Americans, including General Flynn. By the way, Mr. Basile, you are going to be sitting in this chair for yours truly. I'm going to take some vacation time coming up next week. What is going to be your particular focus? Kind of what you've been writing about? Anything else on your mind?
Look, we're going to have some great guests. We've got Speaker Newt Gingrich is going to be with us next week, and KT McFarland. So I promise we're going to take good care of Salcedo Nation for you while you're getting some well-earned R&R.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you both for being here on the Salcedo Show. Have a great weekend. Still to come, folks, the Party of Diversity. We'll talk about that with Diamond and Silk next on Newsmax TV.